Listen to this story now, happening now, actually, reports coming through the wires, is that United States President Donald Trump has reportedly said he is not planning to attend the G20 meeting in South Africa due to what he calls a bad relationship with Pretoria. Washington correspondent Simon Marks joined me now for this latest development. Simon, good to have you with us. So we are reading, and you know how President Trump communicates. The communication seemingly says he did not plan to attend the G20 summit, but goes on further to say, I think maybe I'll send somebody else because I have a lot of problems with South Africa, a lot of people being killed there. Rehashing, I suppose, that debunked claim of white citizens being systematically persecuted and killed in South Africa. This being, of course, according to South Africa, 3 days before the 1st of August when those tariffs kick in. What do we make of this communication?
Yeah, this is very big news that has broken high in the skies between Scotland and the United States. President Trump is hurtling back to the United States aboard Air Force One after his 4-day weekend in Scotland. And he has made news in conversations with reporters aboard the presidential plane, saying that he probably will not attend the G20 Leaders Summit when it takes place in Johannesburg in November. Now, of course, that is not entirely unexpected, but it is the first time that the president has personally articulated that his current expectation is that he will not be joining other world leaders in Johannesburg at the invitation of President Cyril Ramaphosa for that G20 Leaders Summit. He said to reporters, I think maybe I'll send somebody else because I've had a lot of problems with South Africa. A lot of people are being killed. So I think I probably won't. I'd like to, but I don't think I will. So he's sort of leaving the door open there for the possibility of changing his view on all of this. But bear in mind that this is the latest development in a long series of difficulties in the bilateral relationship between the United States and South Africa, symbolized most of all, of course, by that very contentious Oval Office meeting between President Trump and President Ramaphosa just a few weeks ago here in Washington, D.C. We've seen Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, boycott 2 separate preparatory meetings aimed at drawing up the agenda for that G20 summit. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, has also stayed away from one preparatory planning meeting in South Africa. So it's been pretty apparent for a while that the Trump administration had antipathy towards the idea of the president attending that summit of G20 world leaders in Johannesburg. This seems to be the first official confirmation by the President of the United States that as things currently stand, he probably will not attend the summit. And it raises huge questions, of course, for President Ramaphosa, huge fresh questions about the nature of the relationship between the United States and South Africa just 2 days before those tariffs are due to kick in on South Africa, the August the 1st deadline ticking away very rapidly. And it also raises procedural questions for the G20 Leaders Summit. Because remember President Ramaphosa, who has said for months that he was looking forward to inviting President Trump for a round of golf in South Africa, he was due to be handing the G20 gavel over to the American president so that Donald Trump can host next year's G20 Leaders Summit here in the United States. The gavel, presumably, will end up being handed over to a lower-level American official unless Donald Trump, between now and November, changes the viewpoint, changes his mind, as he's expressed it today aboard Air Force One.
Now, looking at that comment and, I suppose, his current attitude towards South Africa, firstly, implications for President Cyril Ramaphosa. Does that mean that Oval Office meeting failed? It was a complete failure in convincing Trump about the allegations of a white genocide in South Africa. But 2, does this then therefore scrap all possibilities of an extension of the deadline on the tariffs?
Well, on the first issue, I mean, I think you raise a very important point, because Donald Trump there on Air Force One today is again articulating the falsehoods about the reality of the situation on the ground in South Africa that have largely driven his policy towards the government of President Ramaphosa over the last several months. President Ramaphosa and his entourage, when they were here a few weeks ago, expressed confidence going into that meeting that they were going to be able to push back, change the president's mind, focus the conversation firmly on economic issues and trade-related issues. And this, I think, is fresh clarification, and there have been so many other indicators of it over the last few weeks, that the Oval Office meeting did not succeed, at least in changing the president's mind about the facts on the ground as they were presented to him by President Ramaphosa and also by others in the room, including Johan Rupert and Ernie Els. On the issue of tariffs, the Commerce Secretary, Commerce Minister Parks Tau, has said within the last 24 hours that the government in Pretoria is still waiting for a response from the Trump administration to a proposal that South Africa furnished the United States with last month, and that certainly as of late last night they had received no feedback from the United States. Donald Trump, of course, is facing the prospect on August the 1st of imposing tariffs of 30% on most South African exports. Tariffs on a whole range of countries, the vast majority of which have not reached any kind of agreement with the Trump administration over the president's trade war. As the clock ticks down to Friday, to the imposition of those tariffs, is the president going to fudge it again here in the United States? Might he offer another extension of his threat to impose those tariffs? We simply don't know, but these have to be very nervous hours for exporters of South African product to the United States.
This communication on Air Force One that's happening high up in the sky, could it have anything to do with the high-level conference on the two-state solution for Israel and Palestine that is currently taking place? And I suppose South Africa doubling down on its foreign policy position?
Yeah, and bear in mind also that these remarks on Air Force One are being made just a couple of hours after the British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer indicated that the UK will follow France and will recognise Palestinian statehood in September, although unlike France, the UK is putting a caveat in there and saying, unless Israel agrees to a ceasefire. President Trump's administration has condemned that United Nations session taking place, the conference on the two-state solution, an extraordinary position for any American government to find itself in, but it is reflective of the fact that the US itself is no longer particularly committed in any way to a two-state solution in the Middle East. I mean, it's not clear to me that the timing of the decision on G20 is tied to what's taking place in New York. But all of this is absolutely redolent of a United States that is pursuing an increasingly isolationist approach to foreign policy, a protectionist approach towards trade policy, and is not particularly interested in having President Trump travel to Johannesburg. I mean, never mind the issues that he claims he has with South Africa. This was an opportunity for the president to be rubbing shoulders with world leaders from 19 other countries. And he says tonight aboard Air Force One that he's probably going to skip it. That's an extraordinary decision for any American president to take, regardless of the issues that he may or may not have with President Ramaphosa and the situation on the ground in South Africa.
Well, Simon, as we wrap up, of course, the procedural implications of handing over a gavel to an empty seat. President Ramaphosa, I remember making a joke saying, well, if he doesn't come, it would mean that I would need to hand over to an empty seat. What does it really mean?
I don't know, because it depends entirely on who President Trump is planning to send in his stead. He's talking about the possibility of sending somebody else. I mean, I suppose that could be the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who also, of course, serves as President Trump's national security advisor. It may be an even lower level official from within the State Department or the embassy of the United States to South Africa. I mean, I think this opens an enormous number of questions for both governments at a time, of course, when South Africa has no ambassador here, when President Ramaphosa's planned special envoy to the United States has been rejected by the US government. It raises an enormous number of questions. There is, though, let's remember, the get-out clause in all of this for President Trump. He said tonight he probably won't attend. I'd like to, but I don't think I will. That may create the opportunity for the South African government to use leverage in the weeks and months ahead to get him to try and change his mind. He's certainly indicating that perhaps his mind is changeable. But this is certainly, I think, from a South African perspective, going to be a very unwelcome development disclosed in those skies somewhere above the Atlantic Ocean tonight.
Simon Marks, appreciate your time. Washington correspondent for us there in the United States, Simon Marks, as the G20 summit is looming closer and closer, just literally months away. This latest development now, US President Donald Trump saying he might not be attending. He's not planning to attend. He might. He'd like to. But South Africa has been doing some troubling things, according to him. I paraphrase there, but essentially rehashing, of course, that past already rebuffed story of a white genocide in South Africa. Let's take a break. What's making news here on the late edition when we continue next? Stay with us.